Hi, well, look, thank you very much, Laura, and thanks everyone for coming out. Last time I was here, it was for some sort of lunch, and there was almost as many people here, and they were giving out booze. So you guys coming to this political party meeting stone cold sober, assuming that's where you are, that's some real commitment to our democracy. And I'm really grateful for people who are prepared to give up their time to make our democracy work. Because actually, it only works through volunteers. You think about it, nobody's forced to vote, except Australians. Nobody's forced to come and listen to a politician. No one's forced to run for office. No one's forced to join a political party. No one's forced to make a donation to a political party, although that is an excellent idea, just saying. Every 3 years, maybe it should be 4. Let's talk about that later, but every 3 years, New Zealanders spontaneously come out of the goodness of their own heart and belief in their own democracy to organise themselves to elect a new government. And I've got to say, given some of the results we've had over the years, it's amazing they keep doing it. But we do, because one of the things that binds us together is hope. And part of the process between elections is for people like me to actually hear how we're going. Because there's a sin tempting every politician, which is to gradually dissolve into the beehive and its practices and its ways of working, until one day you wake up and you sound more like the public servants paid to advise you than the general public who are actually paying for them to do it. That's the sin that you could help inoculate people like me and Laura against, in order that we continue to be speaking on your behalf. So I'm going to talk for a little bit about what the government's doing and why I think it's important that we cherish our values and advance them towards the next election. And then I'm going to turn it over to you. And you might tell me this is the most inspiring moment of your entire life and you just can't wait to donate. Or you might say, Jesus Christ, you got 250,000 voters, supposed to be the stupidest 250,000 people in New Zealand. I can't believe that you're one of our representatives, and walk out. I mean, that's okay. Rather you didn't, but that's okay. We need more civil disagreement. Or you might say, look, it's all well and good, but here's an issue you haven't mentioned that actually I think should be at the front of our discourse. And I can tell you, things that people have raised with me in meetings like this have actually become law. I had a guy not so long ago came to a meeting and said, look, I've got cancer. I said, oh, obviously sorry to hear that. And I'm paying for my own treatment, but I can't get government-funded medicines in a private infusion clinic. And it's not fair because I paid my taxes. Actually, I'm paying twice. So why can't I? We're actually just about to announce we're changing that law. And that came from a meeting like this. So if you're down about whether democracy can actually work, I assure you it can. And I look forward to your feedback. But if I was just to start with what we're doing with the government, there's a guy called Chris Hipkins. I don't know if any of you have heard of him. He's someone I greatly admire. You know, Churchill once said that success is the ability to go from one failure to the next with no loss of enthusiasm. And this guy was responsible for police in a crime wave. He's responsible for the COVID response, which we won't even go into tonight because a lot of people are still suffering PTSD. He's responsible for the education department when the kids stopped going to school. And he was responsible for the healthcare system when they got a $12 billion funding uplift and managed to do fewer operations. And yet, about 1 in 3 New Zealanders still think the guy should be the Prime Minister. Now, I know I said lots of things about how great democracy is, and now you think I'm undercutting that. But anyway, even this guy is occasionally right. And he said the government changed because of the 3 Cs. The cost of living, the crime, and the co-governance. And I came here to Christchurch many times and talked about the 3 Cs, not the Canterbury Clothing Company, but not the Canterbury Crusaders Incorporated, but the 3 C's of the cost of living, crime and co-governance. That's what, when we got into government, we faced 5.5% inflation, mortgage rates with an 8 in front of them, and a government that had increased its expenditure and really should be reported to one of those supernatural television programs that investigates miracles, because they could actually make New Zealand dollars just disappear. I mean, they did by the billion and we're still paying for it. And what we had to do was figure out how we give people a bit of hope, because they're sick of getting to the end of the week and finding that there's no money left in their pocket. They're not just working hard to stand still, they felt like they're working hard and going backwards. People were pretty grumpy. And what we've done more than anything else is we've taken our own spending and we've done what so many people in firms and farms and families and households have had to do. And we've said, right, we're going to live within a budget. We're going to take what we're spending now. It's going to increase by no more than 1.5% each year for the next 4 years. And people say, well, inflation's 2.2. Yeah, it is. We've got it down from 5.5 to 2.2, so it's down. It's under control, I guess. But we're going to spend more, and our spending increase will be less than inflation. Then people say, well, the population goes up 1% and a bit a year, and that usually means you've got to spend more per person. So actually, the inflation and population growth running a bit over 3%. We're running at 1.5%. So for the next 4 years, we're asking the public sector to find about 1.5% improvement in efficiency every year for 4 years. And what that really means is that as people start to look at their interest rates, their mortgage rates, the government taking a smaller slice means that there's relief for everybody else. And you just start to see it. I'm not here to declare victory. We're a long way from it. There's still a lot of pain. And it still depends on who you talk to. But there's a lot of people out there, if you go and ask them, are things getting better? They'll say, things are starting to get better. There's just the first little bit of hope. For example, I was talking to a guy at a car yard, and I said, how's it going? He said, well, this time last year we had 24 test drives in the first 3 months. Now we've had 300 test drives. We're getting 3 test drives a day. Are they buying? Mostly not. But people are cautiously coming out because they see lower interest rates, they see the government keeping its own house in order, and they also see us cutting red tape, whether it's the anti-money laundering laws, the triple CFA, the health and safety laws, the Resource Management Act with fast track and soon a whole new act, specific sectors like early childhood. We're turning the laws over in order that people can spend more of their time producing valuable stuff and less time doing nothing. So the first C was the cost of living, and are we there yet? No, we're not. Are people still doing it tough? Oh yeah, they are. There's no question about these things. But can we point to significant change and having a real plan that means that people are starting to feel a little bit of warm breeze and a little bit of optimism and the start of a turnaround? I think we can say that, and I'm proud to be part of a government where, if I had it my way, we'd be cutting a lot more waste and going a lot faster and cutting more red tape. But I think the government's gone further than it would without ACT, not as far as ACT would. And I think people can start to see that it's not bad. It's not perfect, but it's not bad. Then you come to the crime. Now, the previous guys had an approach which, intellectually I kind of can't disagree with. Their basic approach was, we'll just be really, really kind to the criminals and wait till they start being kind back. And it was going great. It's just people lost patience, that's all, because they saw the victimisation go up 30% in 5 years, and people thought, shit, I don't know if these criminals are getting the message. It doesn't seem to be working. And so we thought, well, maybe this isn't working. Maybe telling the gangs that they're partners and actually giving them $2.7 million from the Victims of Crime Fund to convince people not to take P that they themselves sold the people. Maybe reaching out to the gang saying they're stakeholders in society, and maybe spending more on cultural reports or pre-sentencing reports so that people can get lighter sentences, spending more on that taxpayer money than we spent on victim support. Maybe what we really need to do is make sure that the criminals face some consequences and the victims actually have some rights. So we stopped the pre-sentencing reports. You know what, if you're convicted of a crime, it's just you and the judge and the facts. It's not your taxpayer-funded sob story, some of which were actually also written by people with gang connections. Insane. We brought back 3 strikes because you can maybe forgive someone for one serious crime. And it's possible that someone could make 2 really big mistakes, but if you do 3 serious crimes, of course you should get the maximum sentence. I mean, I think at that point, we've all run out of hope and trust. And we've said to the gangs, look, you can't wear your patches and you can't congregate because you have civil rights, but also other people have civil rights not to be intimidated by your behaviour. And then we've put in place military-style academies for serious youth offenders to say, you know what, actually, I'm tired of hearing from police who say it's just tag and release. We catch these kids, we take them to an Oranga Tamariki facility, and then they just run out the back door. Meanwhile, Karen Chua, one of my most beloved ACT MPs, which I love all equally, of course, but has gone into Oranga Tamariki and said, you know what, these youth facilities, the staff wear no uniforms. The latches are too easy to undo. You can just climb through the ceiling. So she's hardened up the facilities, made the youth wear uniforms. And you know how much KFC we've had to use to get kids off the roof since the government changed? Not one little wing. It is not finger licking good anymore. Incidentally, I met some lobbyists from McDonald's. I said, how pissed off were you that they used KFC instead of... And they're like, yeah, I know, it would have been such good product placement. But the point is, we're not giving them any fast food now because we've basically said if you commit crimes, then there should actually be consequences. And our real objective is that no matter who you are, you're male or female, those are real things, incidentally, I just want to say, rich or poor, you know, no matter whether it's the middle of the night, the week or the weekend, you actually have a right to be safe in the city where you would like to be. That's our overall objective. And a bit like the economy and the cost of living, I'd say, are we there yet? No, I don't believe we are. There's still too much crime. But can we say that we have taken decisive action and flipped the script from being kind to criminals and hoping that fixes everything to putting in place consequences, then doing the rehab? Yeah, I think we can claim that, and I think we can say that we have made a real difference to the safety people have and will continue to do so. The third of the C was co-governance, but I want to talk a bit about health because that's kind of emerged in the meantime. And it's really pretty simple. The solution to health is not more money. If it was, it would be fixed. The solution to health is stopping the massive upheaval and disruption and just letting the people who know what they're doing actually get on with it. Now that sounds like a bit of a politician's snow job, but let me tell you what I mean by that. I was doing a street corner meeting, which I do in my hometown, which I won't name because I want to get out of here alive, and especially after that Blues result, eh? Shit. And I asked this 10-year-old girl, how much has the health budget gone up if it was 18 billion in 2019 and it's 30 billion today? And she looked and she paused. I thought I was not going so well. And then she said 67%. And I think, well, we may have problems in health, but at least education's going better than I thought. But that's the truth. We've gone up 67% in 6 years. And yes, there's been inflation in the last 6 years, but it's about 20-25, it's not 67. And yes, there's been extra pressure on health, but COVID's actually over now to the extent it was ever a health problem for the healthcare system itself. We've gone up 67%, and the question is why we don't get any good value. And I'll tell you why I believe it is. We basically chose to blow up the healthcare system, merge 20 DHBs into one in the middle of a pandemic, then split it into a Māori Health Authority as well. But they didn't do the most basic things like getting a universal patient record. And they didn't ask people to do the most basic things like show up for operations. I was talking to an orthopaedic surgeon on the weekend, and this happens a lot, thankfully not in a professional capacity. And he said, yeah, I had a list this week. There was someone who was urgent. Other people had been bumped from my list, back on the waiting list. And this idiot didn't show up. So we all just sat around. The other patients hadn't come because they were bumped. And so that was, who knows how much this guy earns, and the theatre and the anaesthetist and the anaesthetic technician and the theatre nurse, and all that just wasted for the morning. Other times, one of the key staff members, like the anaesthetic technician, doesn't show up. Another time, some doctors told me that it takes a month to get a mole analysed at the pathology labs. And I went to the pathology lab. I said, this is crazy. If you did this in the US, you get sued, you'd lose your house after 48 hours. And they said, well, the thing is, they haven't adjusted how much they pay us since 2009, so it's not worth our while. We still do them, but we do the other stuff that pays first. I mean, at the end of the day, we're a business. Now, I tried to fix that. My point is that all through the healthcare system, because there's been all this emphasis on restructuring, there has not been the required effort on just trying to make sure that the right people show up at the right time to do the right thing so that you get the business done. And as a result, the waiting lists grow and people wait forever to get a GP. So what we're doing is we're not going to put heaps more, I mean, we are putting more money in, but we're not going to keep hosing money in there. We're going to just stop the reforms, stop the big restructurings, and just work on the micro level, making sure the right people show up at the right time to make use of the 67% extra money they've already had in the last 6 years. And I believe that we'll get huge gains in years to come, not through any big showy reform, just by getting in there and needling, making sure that people are doing the right thing. So I believe that that will improve, and I believe we can do it under the current budget. But I know that there's going to be huge frustration for months, if not years to come, as that massive upheaval of being restructured digests itself and the new money gets used better. Now, the third C, so it's sort of like CCHC now, but the third C was the co-governance. And this really goes to the heart of our story as a country. Are we a partnership between races, which is what the Court of Appeal says the treaty means, or are we, in actual fact, a society where we each have ngā tikanga katoa rite tahi? I try and say that right because it seems to piss off both sides of the debate. It's good fun. But, you know, ngā tikanga katoa rite tahi means the same rights and duties. It's in the treaty that we're equal. And I believe if we don't get to the point where we understand that this is fundamentally a liberal democracy with universal human rights, where each person has a limited time on earth, has challenges and choices, and has chances to take to make the most of that time for themselves and those they care about. If that's not our basic guiding light, if instead we spend the whole time saying, well, my ancestors got here before your ancestors, so you have to do 10 karakia before breakfast, then we are not going to solve the problems that we need to solve. You won't be able to do resource consents or education or health or run local government, because you have to bicker over who's who before you get down and solve problems. And so this government, right across the board, I mean, I take all the heat for the Treaty Principles Bill, but the truth is, we got rid of the Māori Health Authority. We got rid of co-governance of three waters. We're putting Māori wards at council level back to referendum of the whole electorate if you want to change the electoral system. We're doing things on the basis of need, not race. And I'll just give you one little example of bowel cancer screening. The previous government said that you get bowel cancer screening at 50 if you're Māori or Pacific, or at 60 if you were European or Asian. I hate having these discussions and having to single people out, but that's what they said. Now, the logic was that you were more likely to have bowel cancer in your 50s and 60s if you were Maori than if you were not. And the reason for that, and no offence to any of the older people in the community who may be European or Asian, is that the Maori population on average is actually younger. There's actually more people in that age group. So they're more likely as a population to get bowel cancer. However, if you ask any person who's, say, 56 years old, what is your chance of getting bowel cancer? It is absolutely even. Whether you're Maori, whether you're Pacific, you're European, you're Asian, the same chance of getting bowel cancer. Your background is not actually an indicator. The only reason there seems to be a difference is because there's different proportions of each group in each age group. Now, if you're not following, it's because I haven't explained it very well. There's a reason I'm a politician, not a maths teacher. But the point is that if you get the statistics right, that you don't have to discriminate, you don't have to group people by their ancestry. You can take an individual and say, what are your odds of getting bowel cancer at 57? We're either going to screen you or we're not, based on the probability of you getting bowel cancer, and therefore, if we spend a whole lot of money screening people that probably won't get it, we've got less money to treat the people that do, so it's important to get the age right. And as it turns out, what we can afford to do at the moment is screen people for bowel cancer at 58. So we screen all people at 58. It doesn't matter. And that means every person, when they're 58 years old, regardless of background, has an equal chance of getting bowel cancer and an equal entitlement to be screened. Interestingly, one of the people who most strongly agrees with me on this, or maybe I should say I agree with him, is Peter Davis, a sociologist at the University of Auckland, who you may also remember as the husband of Helen Clark. So the old left, the real old left, I love the old left. I reckon I would have been a lefty until about 1980. Then they went totally nuts. But, actually 1990, some of my friends were still around then. The problem you've got is that the new left are obsessed with identity politics. We're not, and we're putting in place equal rights when it comes to the delivery of healthcare. We're also revising the Aotearoa New Zealand history curriculum to show that there are many rights and wrongs in our history. It's not just one-way traffic with victims and villains and colonisation deciding everything. So I think it's fair to say that right across the board, our government is putting in place policies that hold New Zealand to be a society founded on equal rights for all human beings. And that, to me, is our real identity. We are the country, never let it be forgotten, who before anyone else in history said, if you're an adult, at that time a 21-year-old adult, now 18, but if you're an adult New Zealander, you have an equal right to vote without discrimination. And I think that if you look at all the things that have happened in New Zealand, that's probably the one thing that is truly world-leading and profound. No group of humans in any country had ever decided that everyone should have equal political rights up until that time. We were the first. I think we should all be really proud of ourselves for that. Well, I mean, not many of us were around then, but, we should be proud of our country. It was a huge victory for human rights. And, of course, the Treaty Principles Bill, which simply states what I think is obvious, that all humans are equal, that the Parliament has the right to make laws, the full right to make laws, that the Crown should uphold everybody's rights, regardless of their background, and that we all have equal rights and freedoms and protections under the law. I believe that will be the law of New Zealand. And you know why? Because we had a 2-hour debate in Parliament, and lots of people were very abusive and called me names and all the rest, but not a single person said, here is a line in this law we're debating today, and I disagree with it because reason. And I think we'd have a better country without it because blah, blah, blah. Instead, all you heard was heaps of abuse. And you look at some of these people. I mean, Willie Jackson, for example, had a whole year to ask me questions in Parliament. And he asked me one. And we put it on our YouTube, it got 80,000 views. And Laura was there, she said, now I see why they don't ask you questions. I said, I know. Had a whole year. And then he said he wanted to debate me. So TV3, who are still going, by the way, they said, we'd love to host a debate. And Willie Jackson wouldn't. So every time he got offered the chance to have a debate, as I said, Willie, you run like dysentery. Off you go. We'll never hear from you again. And I believe that is because nobody has equipped him with arguments that allow him to persuade anyone that we're not all equal. Now, there's a whole lot of angry people out there. Someone said to me once, you know you're in trouble when they have a chant. There's people out there who are predisposed, they don't like me, they like to chant, whatever. But one by one, people have a habit of, in the quieter moments, looking at the facts for themselves and saying, I don't know why I oppose this. No one's given me a good reason why. And just like many movements in the past, for example, the homosexual law reform movement, in the 70s, Venn Young put up a bill to legalise homosexuality, which in the 70s in New Zealand must have been bloody brave. And people said to him, this is a joke, you won't get anywhere, why don't you stick to the economy? Bill went down in flames. 12 years later, it was legalised. Or euthanasia. Michael Laws put up a bill in 1995, went down in flames, and yet 15 years later, actually 25 years later, legalised. Now legal in New Zealand. I don't want to make grand comparisons, but William Wilberforce put up the first anti-slavery bill in, I think, about 1795, 1807, legalised. It always takes a few attempts, but when you put up a bill that no one can argue with and everyone just abuses you for, you haven't lost. Actually, it's the first sign of winning. And I thank everybody who has supported me in a sometimes difficult and uneasy debate for the Treaty Principles Bill, because I'm more convinced than ever, having seen the opposition's arguments or lack thereof, that we will succeed in making this a country fundamentally founded on the spirit of Kate Shepherd, the treaty itself, universal human rights for all, and equality for each person before the law. And that will be the future of our country. And the Treaty Principles Bill was just a first step towards it. So for that and for all of your support, I thank you. And this is just one step with many more to come. Now I want to talk a little bit before I'll shut up and listen to you guys, because we've just gone to 6:31, so this will be quick. I want to talk a little bit about what it means for the next 18 months, because this is almost half time. We've got a sub coming up, we're going to maybe change ends and go the other way for the second 18 months. I think that the issues that the 3 C's that even Chris Hipkins agrees we campaigned on, those are going to melt away, I suspect. But they're still important. We haven't declared victory on crime and the cost of living. This co-governance will continue to be an issue. But I believe that having fought the last war, increasingly politics will focus on the next war. And I believe that one of the key issues at the soul of our country is not the culture war of, are women real? And of course they are. I don't think we really need to debate that. Only a few crazy people do. The real culture war is, do we push people up or do we drag them down? And are we going to allow the dark underbelly of tall poppy to define our culture and push people away to Australia and beyond? Or are we going to embrace the pioneering spirit that has brought waves of migrants to our country to take a risk and build a better life for themselves and their family? That's the real culture war. It's tall poppy versus meritocracy. And I see it in just about everything we do. When the left are in power, they go after people, they scapegoat. Remember, you guys remember Jacinda, right? She is all inclusion and kindness. Unless, of course, you're a licensed firearm owner, in which case you were accused by association of a crime that you not only didn't commit, but were just as disgusted by as everyone else in the city and beyond. I was here that day, actually. It was a chilling day. But the group punishment of a group of New Zealanders who had nothing to do with it was also a really reprehensible act. And then there were the landlords. Anyone here a landlord? Or a terrorist, I think is what they were previously known as? You're basically offering accommodation at a service at considerable cost and inconvenience and a whole lot of regulation dumped on you. It's sort of scapegoated. I'm proud we brought back mortgage interest deductibility. But that's another group that was dumped on. I think Laura asked how many people were employers. You'd think that for taking risks, giving up a paycheck of your own to offer someone else one, you're some sort of public enemy number one. Too many people dragged down. Anyone here a farmer by any chance? Yeah, you're the worst. I mean, how dare you try and use the land to feed 40 million other people around the world? I mean, Jesus Christ. And next you'll be getting export receipts as well. I see the GDT was up 1.6% yesterday. Now, that'll just encourage you bastards to do even more. But you think about it, it's almost as though farmers were actively trying to destroy their own property and needed to be held back from doing it. And we've got to stop this. We say to young children, if you do all the right things, listen to your teacher, get good grades, get a qualification, get a job, save some money, invest it carefully. If you do all that, things can work out all right. Then we say if we do really well, then we'll take 39%. In fact, we've got 5 different tax rates to take more and more, just in case you aren't getting the message. Totally opposite views that we give New Zealanders at different phases of their life. And then you look at what happens as we talked about crime. If you really screw up, we'll be really kind to you. If you don't, well, what's the worst thing that will happen to you? Not a huge amount. It's actually really hard to go to jail, but many still manage. We have built a country where the connection between effort and reward and crime and consequence has been almost totally dislocated. And when it comes to schools, I talk to teachers, they say kids just find it really hard to fit into the classroom environment, and they got all this acting out and neurodiversity and behaviour. But I put it to them, maybe teachers have been so disempowered that they can't actually enforce the rules. I'll just give you one little example. I was talking to a principal who said they had a kid who got a box of stickers and stickered every car in the teacher's car park. I said, how big was this kid? I said, how big are you? I said, well, why don't you stop him? We're not allowed to touch him. He wasn't imminently hurting another kid. And I said, are you sure? They said, well, technically we could have, but it was easier to take the stickers off than do the paperwork for having restrained a child, so we decided we'd just do that. This is how disempowered New Zealanders have been, so fearful. There's so little reward for success because we're so quick to take that away with more rules and regulations and pulling people down. And yet we're so slow to offer consequences for real misbehaviour. Classic example of this, I don't know if anyone saw this, but I drove a Land Rover up the steps of Parliament recently. And I didn't say it at the time, but it was kind of a social experiment. You see, I knew I wasn't breaking any rules. There is no rule against doing it. No one actually told me that it was forbidden. Someone said that the security guard had said you couldn't do it, but they say you can't do lots of things. I faced no consequence as a result of breaking no actual rule. And we also raised something like $40,000 because up until that point the guy doing the fundraiser only raised $8,000. He got to about 7 in the end, but he got 40 in that week. So we raised about $40,000 for a researcher at the medical school who is creating living heart cells for heart kids. And the genius of this is that kids have these heart valves put in, but then they grow, of course, and they have to have multiple operations throughout their childhood to put bigger and bigger valves in because their heart outgrows the valve, right? These valves grow with the kids, so they have one operation for their whole life. It's unbelievably cool, and we raised 40 grand for that. But what was interesting is I managed to get on the news for 3 nights in a row, and people wonder why trusted media has fallen. And the funny thing was, there were so many people who just really, for me, summed up everything I can't. I mean, I love this country, but there's things I can't stand. Was, you should have asked permission. And you know, well, who should I have asked? I don't know. You should have asked permission. They don't even know who I should have asked. They just feel that you should always ask someone permission before you do anything. I mean, this is the problem. And so my challenge is that the real culture war is to stop dragging people down. When the left are in power, it's the landlords, the farmers, the firearm owners, the small business owners. Now we're in power, and we only drag people, we don't really drag anyone down unless they own a supermarket or a bank, in which case we whack them because everyone's got to have a scapegoat apparently. But I believe we just got to stop it. We've got to embrace our identity as a group of people from all over the world who have so many differences amongst us, but we all get on because what draws us together is that each of us are descended from, or some of us are, people who managed to take the longest, most dangerous and ambitious journey across the earth any human's ever taken to give our kids a better tomorrow. And we should be looking to celebrate success, push people up, don't scapegoat them, don't pull them down, just make the most of our time on earth and respect other people having the right to do that too. And if we could just get a bit more of that attitude, man, this place could really go, because in case you haven't noticed, the rest of the world's kind of rooted at the moment. So we don't actually need to do much to be the place that our children and those after them want to stay, and more good people want to come back to, and perhaps still more talented people want to come and bring their money and their time and talent. So there's a big prize out there. Can really make it easier to solve many of our challenges and make this place really hum. But I believe it does require a fundamental change in attitude, and over the next 18 months we're going to be laying out what that looks like to make New Zealand a place that's just a bit sunny, and not in a Jacinda let's all be kind way, but actually valuing and respecting each people's right to live how they want to live and be the best they can. So that's my speech about what we've done and where I think we're going to go in the next 18 months. I'm so grateful for you coming out. But now the fun and informative part of the night, that's way more than you needed from me. Let's hear what's on your mind.